Hey everybody, how's it going? We are back with How We Shoot It after the season 1, we'll just call it the beta. We're back with season 2, back and better than ever. We didn't really know what was going on in season 1, we still don't in season 2, but Dante Bullhauer and Alyssa Allman are back with How We Shoot It. So we are glad to have you guys. Today, what are we talking about, Alyssa?
We are going to go over personal branding. I think it is fitting as 2023 is coming with a lot of new stuff for my business and your business, and we're both obviously not recording in the same place that we recorded season 1 at, so I think that there has been a ton of change as we've taken kind of a break to get our feet back from under us. So why don't you let the people in on what you've been working on, Dante? What's new this year? What are we doing in 2023?
Too much. We're doing too much in 2023. Yeah, with this whole new year, it's still early in the year, so people maybe are still holding on to like their resolutions or whatever. There's just a lot. It's fair enough. I don't know that I am either, but with this kind of natural like reset or whatever, it's natural for you to kind of think of more long-term stuff. And so for this year, I have a lot planned, you have a lot planned. We both have some lofty goals for this year. But the basis of that is, what are you about? What can clients look for when working with you? Not just from like a technical editing standpoint or whatever, but like, who are you as a person to work with? What can I expect? What style? All that stuff that goes into branding yourself. Will I be seeing trailers on social media of you posting me? Will I be seeing nothing but the final product? There's a whole lot more that goes into branding than just like having a logo and just saying that's my brand. And so like for this year, I really want to grow my brand in terms of outside of like sports. I feel like I've built a pretty good kind of foundation in the sports world of what I can do in terms of hype videos, sports photography, all that type of stuff. So this year I really want to grow that other side of it, the whole other part. I really want to grow in seniors this year. I had so much fun doing that last summer. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to work with a lot more companies and businesses this year, and that's already kind of started to pick up. So building that brand is kind of tunnel visioning where you're at and what you're the best at, but also you're always looking to like expand that brand into more of what interests you and things like that. Obviously, I'm just going to plug it now. Bubbler, I have a great relationship with them. Part of branding yourself is working with companies that align with your kind of vision, and Bubbler has a vision that aligns with me. I use their product every day, and so like it would just be weird if like, for example, you are obviously very focused on weddings. If you worked with like Dove soap or something, or like Dollar Shave Club, like that just wouldn't make sense in terms of your brand. No, I mean, so branding yourself is kind of, yes, putting yourself out there on social media, but it's also working in the realms that you are good at and that also align with your vision. What is your branding goals, I guess, for 2023?
Yeah, I have been really working on upgrading things. Like, I think I've spent a lot of time in this slow season where it's not peak wedding season and the weather sucks and everybody's inside. I've been working a lot on like my mission and vision statements, because like you said at the beginning, working with a photographer isn't just working with their equipment, it's working with them as a person. And I've just been really thinking about what that means and what that's worth. So definitely been doing some writing on my website to make sure that's communicated clearly. I also have been upgrading all my gear. I really want to focus in 2023 on providing high quality final products. Not that my products weren't high quality before, but technology is always changing. Cameras are always getting better. You know this, Dante. The listeners know I upgraded to my second mirrorless camera. Actually, this week it is at the post office. I need to go pick it up. So just really focusing on what it looks like to have a high quality final product, because I remember one of my first wedding seasons, a photographer had come up to me and just talked to me about how you attract what you put out. And I really want to put out high quality products so that high quality clients come to me with their ideas and and trust me with their projects, right? Because if at the end of the day, if you're the best person in the world and everybody loves you, but anybody can do what you do, that's still just not enough. And so I'm really trying to get some high quality products delivered, some high quality camera equipment in, and just overall paint a more clear picture of what it would mean to work with me as a photographer or videographer.
Yeah, and so with kind of freelance creative branding, it's almost like you are the brand. It's kind of like athletes now with NIL stuff. Like, you are basically you're paying the athlete, as a company paying an athlete for NIL stuff, you're paying the athlete to basically be them. So I want to talk about, like, what does that kind of mean? What kind of almost pressure does that put on for your brand? Because it's not really, bubbler sparkling water is sparkling water. That is what people judge as the product, where freelancing and creativity is more, you are judging almost the person, kind of indirectly through their work. But since you are the brand, how does that kind of play into your creative process, knowing that at the end of the day, they're judging your work, but your work is kind of an extension of who you are?
Yeah, that's a huge question. But I mean, obviously the reason we have this podcast is to talk about it. I've really been thinking about how one of the main reasons I love photography and videography is because I can physically make the world see exactly what I'm seeing through my eyes, right? So what that means as far as modeling that brand, like, I always talk about my photos having life and my videos having color and movement and all these things. Like, I talk about it, but then I also want my work to look like that, because it would be really easy for me to say that, but then have only posed, really stiff, really flat imagery on my website. But if you go to my website, I really feel like I'm trying to communicate my core values as a person, influence how I shoot, because I am the brand, and that's why you pay me specifically to do a photo or video project and not just anybody, right? Because it would be a lot easier to not be the brand, wear the brand, all that stuff. It'd be a lot easier to just go in, do my job, get the shots, and go home. But as a creative, that's just not enough for me. It's not enough for you. I think anybody who's passionate about what they do would be like, that's not what it's about. So to me, it's really walking the walk and talking the talk. Like, I say that I love weddings and I love people and I love light and color and movement. And so I feel like when you go to my Instagram feed or my TikTok feed or whatever, like, that's what you're going to see there too. And so it's being vulnerable enough online that it matches who you are offline. And it's this really tricky balance of what do you share, how do you share it, when do you share it. But I think if you're not interested in walking that line, then the creative world might not be for you. Like, maybe that's harsh. I don't want it to be harsh, but you are constantly on. Dante and I talk about this all the time. We are constantly working, and it's like, it's not work though, because it's just life. Like, this is just what I'm doing. I don't know what else I would be doing if I wasn't doing this. I'd be in an office somewhere. And so it's this, and with the invention of social media too, is tenfold, because now you can never turn it off, because you're always supposed to be online when you are a creative, because how else are you going to get your stuff seen, right? So I don't know if that answers your question. That's kind of a roundabout way into things, but I feel like being a creative ends up being more of a lifestyle than it does a career, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, like we've talked about, like if this wasn't a job, like what would we do every day? We've both said like we'd be doing this anyway. And being able to make money off it is just kind of a add-on to it. It's obviously, once you're able to kind of make a living off of it, that's the goal. But even if we weren't making a living off of it during our free time, this is what we'd be doing. And I think along with kind of the social media strain, it's interesting because the stuff that you create kind of has a joint relationship with the client's vision and then your vision, and what that looks like as a sum of those two kind of ideas. Because you want to, like for example, doing weddings, you want to exemplify the day in the best interest of the people that are paying you, the bride and groom and that sort of thing. But you also want to showcase your creativity and your creative flair within that. And so it is that interesting thing, and we've kind of touched on this, between if you go too far into, I just want this to be about me, what I can do, my creativity, you kind of move into that influencer clout chasing type kind of realm but if you go too far into kind of focusing on what the client wants, you really have no creative identity. And so working that balance into developing your brand is kind of every shoot is a balance of, I want to serve them the best way possible, but I also want to serve them in the way that best suits me, because at the end of the day, they're hiring me for my creativity. So working that balance, and especially on social, when you, as creatives, almost everything has to be curated to a T. Because if it's not, if you put something out there that's off brand, people are like, what is that? Why did you post that? This has nothing to do with your kind of identity. And so it's like a balancing act between your brand and what you ended up taking the jobs. And that's kind of back to my last point. You want to work with brands that also align with your vision, because if you don't, then you get too much into one side of the spectrum or the other.
Yeah, and another side of that spectrum, at least for me, is if you don't have a brand, if you don't have a direction you're heading with the content you create, then it's way easier to fall into comparison syndrome and being like, well, why don't my photos look like that person? Why doesn't my videos look like that person? And I would challenge anybody who's feeling that way to really think about if you have decided what you want your content to look like. Because at the end of the day, if you're just aspiring to have your photos or videos look like someone else's, you're never going to find that satisfaction of having your own work and your own identity, because it doesn't exist. And that's something that I've really had to work through as I've continued taking photos, is managing that comparison syndrome of okay, Dante's obviously a super talented photographer and videographer, but just because he is really good at what he does doesn't mean I'm not good at what I do, because at the end of the day, we still do them differently. We could shoot, it would be actually, sometime we should do this, Dante. We should both take the same camera, the same lens, and go shoot and see what they end up looking like. Because if you have a brand, if you have an identity, you're not going to, no matter how similar the scenario is, no matter how similar the shoot is, your work's should speak differently than the person you're shooting next to, because you have your own identity and your own brand. But that all comes with a ton of work, a ton of improving your own set of skills, a ton of collaborating with others, a ton of self-awareness, and also humility to realize that you've got to come up with it yourself. I don't know, it's a whole thing. And I think people think that we just log on to social media and start posting, and it's like, no, it's like post and then pivot, and then post and then pivot to what you think you need to do next, and then eventually you're kind of at least going in the same direction. But even then, it's also a matter of what you don't post. Keeping a brand also means presenting yourself as a professional all the time. So you also have to walk this fine line of being we're all humans, we're all a mess. I'm a mess, Dante's a mess, and not having that look badly on your brand either, right? I always got so confused why people would post, like inappropriate things or like just like stuff you wouldn't want to see on social media and then wonder how that affects them in real life. It's like, it's the same thing. Whether you own a business or whether you're just a person on social media, you're still a brand. And like you said at the beginning, with NIL becoming a thing, even if you're not a photographer or videographer listening to this, if you want to be in any sort of public space, you're essentially creating your own brand the second you make a social media profile, whether you want to or not. It's just kind of the nature of 2023.
Yeah, and so I kind of touched on this through a couple interviews through a social media event I spoke at last week. Nowadays, with the power of social media, you can almost develop yourself as a brand in any avenue. You can post a singing video on TikTok and have it go viral. And then from that moment on, what you do is monitored by thousands and even potentially millions of people. You can post an ASMR video of you like breaking eggs or something. And from that point on, people are going to judge you on your future posts and the brand that you build through that social media kind of platform. So I kind of want to touch on, with creativity, it's like we talk about, it's kind of an extension of us. Obviously, as people, we are always growing and learning and going through highs and lows. And so with that kind of ever evolving sense of just us growing as people, how does that affect our brand? Because obviously, like you talked about, what we do post is as important as what we don't post. And sometimes when we're going through lulls or low points or things like that, you don't want to see, you don't want to post that stuff on social media, but you also, especially in today's world, don't just want to go dark mode and abstain from posting for like 2 months. So how do you kind of deal with the ebb and flow of just even changing just as a person through also trying to keep that brand as on par with what you want it to be as possible?
Yeah, I think it goes back to having a brand to begin with. Like from the beginning when I started AA Productions, I knew what style of photography I liked. I knew what style of videography I liked. And I let that kind of lead the way as far as when it comes to learning new things, is I knew where I wanted to go. I didn't know how I was going to get there, and I didn't know what it was going to look like to get there. But from the beginning, I at least had a direction. So that's what I'd start with, is without completely convincing yourself that you're never going to be good enough and you should never even try, find a couple photographers or videographers or vloggers or YouTubers, whoever they are, and start to really pick apart their content and be like, okay, how did they do this? How did they do that? How can I replicate that without ripping it off? And I'm sorry if you thought today's episode was going to be, this is how you do it and that's how. It's not. It's just not that simple. So I think having the direction first and foremost, and then secondly, being honest about that direction. I think that just from a moral standpoint, the more transparency on social media from your business, the better. Like if I'm going through a busy season, I love telling people that, like, hey, I'm still here if you need me. I'm just not posting as much because I'm editing wedding videos. Right now, it's the flip-flop where I am not editing and shooting a ton of videos right now because it's January in the Midwest and it's negative 108 degrees outside. So I'm just working on posting a lot of content and making my clients feel seen and supported and loved, and making them feel special and highlighting some of the memories from their day, because my website says don't just love people, really love them, right? So it's this idea of having your decision be your direction, and then constantly pursuing that, even if it means failing sometimes, or even if it means learning something new, or just continuing to keep forward progress without, going stagnant.
Yeah, and I think that comes from a lot of just kind of self-reflection of what do I want, if I was famous or like everybody knew me, what would I want to be known for? Would I want to be known for like, oh, I take amazing photos? Or would I want to be known for, wow, I captured this person's day and their emotion and all the things that went into this shoot the way that they wanted it to be captured. And I brought out the best of them. So like, I love making like little kind of short films with like kind of like a, not like inspirational message, but just kind of a deeper message than typically what is shared on social media. And so I knew kind of from the point that I started creating stuff that I wanted my content to have a message behind it. I didn't want it to be kind of hype beast content like, oh, look at all these insane places, look at this sick shot of this sick dunk, this what it like. I wanted it to kind of to bring out kind of an emotion behind it. And so the things that I love creating the most have that message behind it, and that I feel is kind of the underlying layer and the foundation of my brand. It's not just, oh, here's some photos from this game. Like, for example, Aurora football. Sorry to bring you guys up because you got runner up, but it's kind of the photos that I took for that game. None of them are going to even watch this, so whatever. But yeah. But the photos that I posted from that game, I didn't post a single action photo on Instagram from that game. I posted the photos after they had lost that game and the emotion that came out of them. Obviously, losing in the state championship sucks. I've done it, I've been there, so I kind of related to it. Those are the photos that I want to be known for. You can learn how to take good action shots of sports, but capturing kind of a documentary style emotional photo is what I want to brand myself as. Not just, oh yeah, he threw the ball, I photographed it, cool, like whatever. I want to be known for that emotion that I bring out of those photos. And so those were the ones that I posted, even though yeah, they didn't win and yeah, they were crying, whatever, but those photos had so much more like power to them than just a random throw or catch or tackle in a game. And so just doing that self-reflection of what do I want my content to speak about?
Yeah, and it can feel, I think, overwhelming to start, but the best thing that I've learned is to think actually quite small. Like, it would be super overwhelming for me to come out on social media and say, I'm gonna be the best wedding photographer in the world. I could say that. I could claim that for myself, but it seems way overwhelming. It puts a lot of pressure on me. It's not sustainable. It's not obtainable at this point in time. Nobody's going to be the best ever the first time they go out and shoot, unless, there's the 1% of, the Michael Jordans and all that. But that's personally not me, and I'm okay with that. So instead of thinking big, I want to be the best in the world, it's like, no, I want to be the kindest, nicest, most realistic, talented videographer in the greater metropolitan Omaha area. And though by breaking it down into a niche or breaking it down into an area, there's less steps to get there and there's more ways to track success. Because if I had said I was the best videographer in the world when I started 5 years ago, then I would be completely failing right now. I would be completely failing. But because I branded myself as someone who cares about people, who cares about brides, who loves weddings, I think weddings are the best thing ever. I've been obsessed with them since I was little. Now I can look back on my Instagram feed and be like, man, if 13-year-old me playing Nintendo Wedding Design Day would see this, she'd be so happy, right? Like, it's it's a completely different way of measuring success, but in having that branding and knowing who you are and the kind of content you want to create, you're going to be a lot happier, A, with your end product, and B, with your business as a whole. So yeah, it's really more about really having that self-reflection, like you said, and knowing who you are, where you're going, and why. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just staying true to yourself. Like, if you are trying to get somewhere that you don't really feel relates to your brand, then you need to do some kind of internal steps to make that pivot. You can't just say, I couldn't just go out and say like, oh, I'm a wedding photographer now. I have my first wedding photography photo gig this summer. I couldn't just say, I'm done shooting sports, done doing seniors, I'm a wedding photographer. To build that brand, one, you have to have that foundation, and two, it has to be you. It has to be genuine, because people, even on social media, people can see through fake and polished and surface level. They can see through all of that a lot better than you think that they can. And so staying true to yourself will be the biggest kind of reinforcement to your brand that more than anything else will be.
Yeah, I think that sums it up great. I mean, there's definitely an aspect of personal life you put on display when sharing your content, and when your content and your personal life don't match that up, yeah, people smell BS even through screens. And I think that we forget sometimes, especially in this world and like the world that we're in, like it's a lot easier to become a content creator if you're a photographer, but still being a photographer to a photographer means way more than just posting on social. So it's this constant, again, I always say balance, and balance doesn't really exist because we're always going for the next thing, right? But it's this constant tension of knowing who you are, knowing the kind of content you need to create, and then somehow meeting in the middle. But as you practice and as you take more shoots and as you do more work and as you edit more, that really starts to come to light. So it's a matter of being disciplined with your technique and your skill, but also holding things kind of loose while you try to figure it out. It's both and I certainly haven't figured it out. I feel like this is the first year that I've been able to post on social and be like, okay, I'm a wedding videographer, like I can do this. But it took a long time, and it took a lot of practice and a lot of shooting and a lot of posting and a lot of comparing myself to others to finally get to that point. But what about you? What would you say your brand is now? What would you market yourself as now compared to when you were 17?
Yeah, I would say that I am obviously centered largely in sports. I played sports, so I feel that gives me kind of a leg up on other photographers that maybe have not played sports and kind of got into it after their high school or college or whatever career is over. So I love sports. I love the emotion that comes out of them. But I really just love capturing emotion behind the photo. Like if you look at a photo of mine and you see the intentionality of it, and if you kind of get just 1% of my thought process taking it, that is what I would say I brand myself as, because I see a lot of especially with sports, you can post a general hype video, recap video, whatever, and have it be pretty surface level. Here's what happened during the game. Players made shots, one team won, one team lost. Where I pride myself in my brand and how I try to market myself is not only the creativity, but the intentionality of every shot and the thought process that goes into what emotion am I conveying through this video. It's not just, oh, look what happened during the game. It's here's how these players and this game kind of went emotionally for fans, for players, for coaches, for everybody involved. This is like what you would feel if you were in the game, if you were watching the game live, things like that. So more than anything, I like to think that I brand myself as kind of a more thoughtful, emotional photographer, videographer, graphic designer, whatever, largely based in sports and seniors and things like that. But more than anything, I think my brand is more of a kind of deeper emotional level of content than maybe you see through most kind of sports or other creatives in the area.
Yeah, it'd be easy to just go out and take a photo of a football player, but what does it take to know the backstory of the team? How many wins, how many losses are they going in? What's the coach doing? Knowing all of those details, I think takes a creative from good to great, because once you can start capturing the emotion, that's when a photo goes from a photo to a memory to a moment to something people hang on their walls. And I don't think it gets better than that. Being a creative is knowing your clients, and your clients know who you are, and then you come together and you create something that you both love. And I think if you're not here for that, what are you doing?
Yep.
Just a question.
Throw that camera away or sell it on Facebook Marketplace.
Or Fred Miranda, but that's a conversation for another day.
FredMiranda.com. We'll get sponsored by them and we'll start plugging them in our podcast.
No, but I think that sums it pretty much up. We are so excited to be back recording these. Hopefully getting a couple more out before the busy season of summer hits and spring sports and all that stuff. But if you like this episode, go ahead and subscribe to it in the YouTube channel or whatever podcast platform you're in. And we will see you next time.